Hello everyone, welcome to Deep Developer YouTube channel where we make videos on Spring Boot, Java, microservices, API development in all the Java backend things. So in this video, we will be discussing about how to write unit testing in Spring Boot project. We will be using Mockito and JUnit framework for writing the unit test cases. So what we will achieve in this video? So I will discuss you about what is actually a unit testing means and why unit testing is required in a real life applications, and then we will set up our Spring Boot project where I will be creating one employee service applications. Then I will follow the standard project structures to set up or create all the files. Then we will write down the few of the test cases where we will be testing addEmployee method, and we will be testing the getEmployee method, and also we will be learning few of the annotations that are mostly used in JUnit or the unit testings. Lastly, we will measure the code coverage, means out of your 100% of the application, how many percentage of code are being covered via unit test cases. So we will also learn in this video. So in the description sections, I already have pasted the GitHub link of this project. You can clone it and you can go through along with me. Else, you can open your IDE and do coding along with me, whatever I am doing. So let's get started. And also, before going ahead with the video, please subscribe to the channel, and if you have any issues, you can ask on the same time on the comment section. So let's get started. So first we will be create one project, Spring Boot project. For that we will be going to the start.spring.io website, where I will be named the group as in com.deepdeveloper, and artifact I will be using or writing as unit testing. Then you can package it as in jar, and Java 17 or more than 17 you can use it. And dependency we can use as an web, Spring Web, where as we are dealing with the web applications or the writing with the REST API. Next, we need to use MySQL driver, because to connect with the MySQL we have MySQL driver, and JPA to persist the data on the database, and Lombok dependency to reduce the boilerplate code, like to reduce the getter and setter method. So we don't need to explicitly mention that. And also we need JUnit, but to specifically if you search for JUnit, so it is not there, because JUnit is by default it's provided by the Spring framework on Spring Starter parent project. So I will be showing that. So you can generate this project and open on the IDE. So I have generated this and I have opened this on the IDE. Let me open the IDE. So I have opened that unit testing project. So if you see, like this, basic structures is present, and I have nothing is there initially. So first understand like what is actually a JUnit or the unit testing, and why JUnit framework or Mockito framework is required, or why actually unit testing is required. Suppose we are dealing with or writing in the real life applications. So on there we are writing the lots of method in day-to-day life. So those are other business method which is providing some input, and on basis of the input we are getting some output. So it is best practices, or it is mandatory to test whatever the applications or whatever the methods we are writing, because as a developer we know that what attributes it will accept and what things it will return. So we should make sure that whether those functions are working correctly or not, because then only the application will be run smoothly. So to do that we will be having JUnit and Mockito framework. So this framework we don't need to explicitly add in the dependency. So there is a one dependency which will be automatically added by the Spring, is called the Spring Boot starter test. If you click on this Spring Boot starter test, that POM file will be generated, and if you scroll down little bit, you see like there is a one JUnit and Mockito is dependency has been automatically added. So it is automatically calling JUnit and Mockito dependency. So as of now we are clear with the two things, like why JUnit is required, and we have set up this JUnit and Mockito on the Spring Boot application. Now we will do the project setup, then we will be writing the unit test cases. So to do the project starter, actually we need to connect this with the MySQL. This application we need to connect this with the MySQL. For that we have some kind of properties files, so I will be adding this properties file. So I have already added this properties file where we have URL of the MySQL and password, username, and Hibernate we are making as DDL auto, means whatever the methods whatever the classes we have mentioned with table, that will automatically generated on the database, and if it is not there on the database, so it will be create a new, and if there it will be modified. So application.properties file is fine. Now we need to have some kind of entity files, and we will be having service classes as well as the controller classes as well as the repository classes. So let me create those things one by one. So actually I have pasted all the repository, service and controller class. You can see that. Let me explain you one by one. So first we can move to this entity class, where we have created one table of employee, and it have one ID, name and salary, and the getter and setter method or argument, no argument constructor will be automatically get generated. Then once that employee entity is generated, now we should have some repository. So we have created one interface called employee repository, and which is extending JPA repository, and JPA repository have all the methods to add on the database. So it have add method, find by all methods, and other methods. You can rewatch one of my CRUD repository CRUD operation videos where I have explained each and every details. The link will be provided on the descriptions. Then once the repository is created, now we should have service class, because service class will be using this repository class, and in the service class we will be having all the business logic. So here we have created two methods called add, which will be adding an employee, and it will be accepting the employee object, and it will be saving to the database. And we have one delete employee method, so it will be accepting one integer as an ID, and it will be deleting that employee. And we have one controller, so we have API called add and delete to delete and add respectively. So controller will not required in this specific project. So we mostly deal with this employee service, because here all the logic is being written. So we will test this employee service. So one project structures should be followed, if you see that in the test directory, in the same way like in the code directory of Java, that we will be creating one service package. So it will be a test package, so I will be named as service, and we will be creating this employee service test class in this service package. So let me create that employee service. We can append it with test for the naming purpose. Now if we see that by default one unit testing application test that is being provided, so that is not being written by us, it is written by automatically by the Spring. So now we need to test this add method. So for testing this, because we should test it, so it will be tested in as one method. So we can name it as a public void add. We are naming it as an add. So before going ahead, let me explain you a few basic details. So to mention any functions, so we'll be creating one function called public void test. Public void test, we can mention it as anything like simple test method. So it is not a test method, but to make it any method as a test method, we need to annotate with test. So once we annotate with test, so we see this test method is coming from Junit. So and you see the run icon is coming. So with clicking on this, we can run this specific test method, or if we run whatever the test method is there. So now we have created one add method now, so it will be also a test method, so we will add it as a test. So and this is the double run method is showing. So if you click on this, all the test method will be automatically run. So we want to test this add method. So to test this add method, first it is coming from the employee service. So first employee service object we should create. So what we will do, and here we will be creating one employee service objects, but and from this employee service link this add method is accepting like one argument, right? It should be on employee argument, employee employee argument. So employee employee argument it is accepting. So if we see this add method is accepting one employee argument, okay, and it is returning an employee object. So after the updated, so the return type will be stored on employee updated, or we can say as an new employee. So after adding it into the database, a new employee will be added, and here we need to pass a new employee. So for that we can mention it as an employee new, because basically this add method will accept this employee, and from the JSON we are actually from the postman we are actually passing the value, but here we are testing, so we will explicitly write here. So we have like set id, I can mention this one, employee dot set name Subhodip, and dot set salary, you can mention it as 1,000. So now this is being set properly. So when we added this employee, then we will be accepting as a return type a new employee will be accepted. So after adding it to this, so to use this employee service, so employee service we are calling now, and here we are not creating the object of this. So to create an object of this employee service, we have like inject annotations, sorry, we have mock annotations. So it will be creating the mock object of this employee service. And if we go to this documentations, you can read this documentation. So mock is an like field level, so any fields or the attributes we are providing, you can mock it. So create a mock instance of employee repository, no real DB is interaction. So here we can in any of the classes we can make it as a mock. So if we make this employee service as a mock, and if we check this employee service is internally calling employee repository as well, so we need to mock this employee repository as well. So we can do this mock, and yeah, so we have mock these two, but if we see this employee is internally created this employee repository object. So to inject that object, we have one more annotation called mock inject mock, inject mock. So if we see this documentation, we have inject mock. So it create an instance of employee service and inject the mock employee repository into it, because this constructor of employee service contain the employee repository. So that's why we are using inject mock. And as we are dealing with this Mockito, so there is one annotation is there, we need to extend it with Mockito extension dot class. So what is doing, enable Mockito for JUnit 5 testing, initialized mock and inject them into the inject mock and manage the test lifecycle. So to do that, I'll be just a minute, I will copy this, Control C, so I will be import this and extend with Mockito annotation. So now we have created the object, and from the object we have called it. Okay, so we have called it and it is returning the values, but whatever the value is returning and whatever the values we are passing from the employee and whatever the values is returning, we need to verify that whether those values are correct or not. So to verify that, we have function called assassin, ASSERTION, assassin dot assert, assert equals. We have function called assert equals, which is, if you see that, which is accepting expected comma actual value. So as a developer, what is the expected value and actual value? What we can, actual value we have passed here. So from this employee dot salary, we can test this. Employee dot get salary. This is the actual value we have passed. So get salary. And what is the expected value after adding to the database? So new employee is the expected value. So get salary. And if we see this add method is calling to this same method internally. And if you click on this same method, just a minute. So if you click on this same method, and you see this same method is already written by this Spring framework or the Spring developer, and they have already done this testing of this same method, and it is 100% sure, and that's why we are using this libraries. So we no need to test this same method specifically. So instead we can use this. So how to use this? We will tell, like, whenever this employee the same method is called, then return some values, because that is already tested and we are 100% sure, right? So what we will do? So for that we have called like a Mockito. We have Mockito dot when, like if you see when t method call, like when any method call. So when any method call, what method it is calling. So I will copy this, save with employee object. I will paste it, then I will add it, like when the same method is called, then return something. Then what will be returning? Then returning a employee. So it will be returning the same employee, right? So when we this will be added, and it will be returning this employee, and this is 100% sure this same method is working fine. Now we'll test this method whether it is working fine or not. So to test this, I will just do click here and run. We can use that run with coverage and run. I'll show you that what is that meaning by run with coverage. So now click on add run. So as we see this in the left down corner, the employee service test is being passed, and you see this add method, it's showing one test pass. So green tick is showing. Now this we see this add method is perfectly running fine. Now we need to next step is that we need to check or we need to understand what is this before each test, after each and after all annotation means. So let me create those classes first, method first, then I will explain you. So before all annotations, before each, and after all after each annotations I have used, and it is created on the different methods. So if we see before all, it's a static method, and it's called only one time when the class is load. So this will be called for the one time. I'll explain that also. And if we see the before each method it is not a static method, so it will be called every time when a test method is called. So in this project we have like two test method annotated with the test. So test, so whenever these two test method will be called, so it will be calling two times, so as because the two test method is there. And if we see after each, so it will be called every time when the test method complete its execution. Whenever this test method completed their execution, after that this after each method will be called, and after all method will be called one time when the class completes its execution. I will run this also and I will show you that. So why these methods are there? Because if we see this before all init method, so it's actually it want to initialize some of the things. Like if we see this mock method we can mention it in the initialized method, and wherever some things we need to initialize before starting the application or before starting the any of the test method, we can write it on the before all method. And before each method, like for each method, if there is any common behavior is there, for in both of these cases, if there is a common behavior is there, in that case we can put it in before each method. And after all, it's reverse to those, like it will destroy other things like it will destroy the object creations, and if you destroy the connection or the closing of the connection, that type kind of things you can write it there. So now I will run this application, sorry, I will run both of these test cases at a once. So I cannot run from here because here it is only one arrow is there. So I will run from this. So before that I will run it on employee service using coverage. So once we do like run employee service using coverage, so we will get to know like how much percentage of the code is being tested by our these two methods, because that unit test coverage is required, right? So last what we discussed, like measuring the code coverage. So this is the sixth step. So here we will be just measuring the how many test coverage is there. So and the percentage of the test it will be showing. So if we see that it is saying that 2 test passes. So 2 test passes, the 2 total test cases is there. So how the 2 total test cases? Because in this files we have 2 methods what I have annotated with the test. There is a one add method and one is a test method, and there is a sum before each and after all after each method as called now. So if we see this method service, and here all the execution is there. If you see that class call only one time when the class loaded, so it is before all method. So before all method it is called only one time. So I will show that coverage as well. And call every time when the test method is called. So call every time when the test method is called, because test method is this is called one time and this is called one time. So call every time when the test method is called, this statement is printed twice, and called every time when the test method is completed execution. So completed execution, because 2 methods are there, they completed their execution, that's why 2 times. And after all, this destroy method call only one time when the class completes this execution. You can see this call only one time when the class completes this execution. And those methods whatever we have created test method, that are perfectly tested fine. And let's check about the coverage, because here we are testing this employee service. So if you go to this employee service, so if we see the employee service, so there is a one green flag is showing, the green what is that green icon is showing. So this means this particular areas are being covered, and whatever it is showing red, so those are not covered. So here we are not tested the delete employee methods. So so that's why the coverage is showing red. So if you in the right hand side, if you check, if we just expand this, and if we say see this employee service method percentage 50 1/2 means yeah, that in employee service we have 2 methods, right? So employee service we have add method and delete employee method, and out of two one is tested. So that's why 1/2 means 50%. And line means in this area if you see there is only 2 lines are there. So that's why it is saying only out of 2 like 1 line tested, means this line number 14 is only tested. So that's why it is showing green. So if any other thing is got tested, then that will show green. And like that I will like understand how many tests are being covered in the applications. So that's all with the video. If you have any issue, you can ask me on the comment sections, and thank you for watching the video.